All right, here we go again with another unboxing of an Origin PC product. So this one, once again comes in their optional crating service wood box thing. Actually came on a pallet via freight because for the first time in all the time we've been reviewing Origin products, this one has Hardline tubing in it. We've shown a bunch of the Origin stuff, but I've always told them like, hey, I like to review the things that are a little bit more mid-grade. But this time they were like, hey, we're gonna send you something from our top tier catalog. All I know is that it's an AMD system featuring a 5950X, Hardline tubing, and an RTX 3090. But I don't know much about like, oh, and it's using the Corsair 5000X case, which is something they really wanted to showcase this time around. Origin PC has a lot of custom enclosures or chassis that are designed just for them that you can only get if you build one or build out one of their systems. But they're actually using a lot of Corsair cases now, which is helping with costs, but also allowing them to kind of be able to pump out systems a little bit faster too. So I'm kind of curious as to exactly.
I don't know why I also expected to see the computer right there.
I know, but it's... Nick, sit down. I've got this. Well, I'm trying to maintain it's this side up. Oh, the light got sad. Ah, see, it got even sadder. Okay, so again, upright is important because this is a pre-filled system. It did come on a pallet, and with it having all the fluids and the Hardline, I'm really curious as to how they protected them. One of the reasons why I don't sell systems for people to be able to buy is I'm terrified of the shipping process. Look, I worked for FedEx as a driver. I know what I did to boxes, and I know what they went through prior to getting to me. All right, here's your accessory box that comes with every system. Oh, look, I know what color our cables are. So here's the extra PSU cables that would come with like extra 8-pin CPU power cables, PCI Express cables, your little driver USB. They even give you an HDMI cable, and then extra RGB cables, extra SATA cables, wireless antenna for our ROG motherboard. So now we know it's an ROG motherboard. Power cable, which is a heavy gauge, and some like cable mod, 20% off coupons and stuff. So there's your box of accessories. I'm not gonna try and get this out the normal way. I wanna leave it all upright. So I'm just going to cut the box open. We're not gonna have a box to put it back in, but that's fine. If it's really pretty, it'll end up on my desk anyway. Spyderco, Spyderco. Cuts open everything a Spyderco can. Ever wonder how those scratches got in the table? So here is the system. It's the full tower 5000X from Corsair. Heavy. So it's protected in this nice soft bag. This is the back. I don't think people who've never picked up a fully rigid tube build can truly understand how heavy they can get. All right, here we go. Getting ready for the reveal. Would you say we pull off this veil into a Phil B-roll? Oh. Yeah. All right, so as you can see, the 5000X is very similar to the 5000D Airflow that we did a review of. The difference is the front panel and the top panel and all that, which is normally the perforated vented solid pieces, are tempered glass. So it's gonna have a little bit less airflow than the Airflow version. However, it still looks really good. See, these are those frosted tubes. You know what I love about the frosted tubes? They look cold. And as you can see with the foam here, man, They didn't use Instapack, but they did support it with this foam, which is awesome. Same thing with the pump here. You know what sucks about this? Origin, you're taking a lot of my thunder. I'm supposed to do a build where I show you guys how to do water cooling using Corsair's new lineup of water cooling parts. This is like exactly what I was gonna do. The white fittings, the white fans, the white pump, the frosted tubes in the 5000D airflow, white case. No, this is my first time seeing the frosted tubes. I really like these tubes. So you can see they've actually utilized one radiator on the top, which is a white Corsair. I'm not sure if that's painted or if they actually have a white version. And then they put one in the backside here, which we talked about in our 5000D case review. My gosh, it's so heavy. Hey. Okay, so we've got a Samsung solid state drive right here. Here's the built-in hub. Look at how nice and neat the wiring is, all tucked away down here. It's an HX 1200 power supply, so 1200 watts. The graphics card, it's funny. It's about the size of like a 60 series card that you would see in the past. But this is actually an RTX 3090 Founders Edition. But because they're so short, remember the PCB short because it has a big overhang for the fan to have a pass through. And the fact that we have, unfortunately, I wish they made white ones of these, that'd be perfect. But they actually routed this in a way to where it doesn't look terrible coming off the card. But you can see with how short the PCB is, it just leaves all sorts of room. Because back in the day, you have a nice, long custom graphics card. It would interfere with hitting things like the pump on the front and such like that. So what do you say we go ahead and get this bad boy fired up, and then we do some temperature testing, see what the lighting scheme looks like, and I'm really curious as to what the temps are gonna be like with the solid side panels on there. So let's get this all cleaned up and fired up. All right, so we got it fired up. I think they might have heard somewhere through the grapevine, I know I've mentioned it in our setup reviews, that I like Vaporwave. That's my setup at home. They've set everything up with Vaporwave. I'm assuming this is using iCUE because there's so many Corsair parts. Yep, there's iCUE right there. So that comes pre-installed. You can see it detected all the devices on here. 2 lighting nodes, plus a Commander Pro, plus the Dominator Platinum RGB memory that's in there. There is 64 gigabytes of it. The RGB glaive mouse, which we have right here, as well as the K95 Corsair, what is this? Oh yeah, keyboard. And then obviously the Corsair water block for our 3090 is showing up right there because it is an RGB device. So the motherboard is a CROSSHAIR 8 Hero from ASUS ROG. That's obviously an X570 board, which has got our 5950X on there. There's no overclock or anything applied to the 5950X. In fact, the Ryzen Master isn't even pre-installed on here. But because it is installed with Windows 20H2, right? Yeah, 20H2. It doesn't need any of the power profiles that the older versions of Windows does. It does have an Origin PC profile in here. I set it to high performance because that's the way I do it, especially when we're water cooled. And it also has a white Elgato capture card in there as well. You might notice the use of the Corsair components in here with Origin PC as well as the Elgato, because all of them are actually part of the same corporate family. So it's kind of nice to see the cross promotion here of all the different parts, and you can see what a full Corsair setup in Origin PC looks like here when it is all installed. So one thing I want to talk about though with the rigid tubing, because this is one thing they said they were really interested in getting my feedback on. I really like the frosted tubes. However, I feel like there's some little things that could make this that much better. The tubes are not perfect. No rigid tubed system is ever perfect, but I feel like there's areas for improvement. For instance, when it comes to the, let's start right here with the water pump. If they were to do a 90 into another 90 down, that probably would have made that perfectly vertical. I feel like that would have made that look neater because we've got so much square happening here. Having that one angle looks off. The other horizontal tubes are not perfectly horizontal. This one here, you can see the fitting coming off the CPU block is rotated to fit it. That's because that flat piece right there needs to be slightly longer. They've got this kind of a double bend happening right here coming out of the GPU block into the CPU. Yeah, it's GPU to CPU. So that would have been nicer to make it probably a 1/4 inch longer or maybe 3 or 4 millimeters longer to make that perfectly straight. The same thing kind of going on here with the GPU. It kind of goes down at a degree or two. So little things like that I think could have made a big difference in terms of just the overall appearance of the tubes. I mean, that's how anal I am when it comes to trying to make my tubes as perfectly parallel as possible. I'm not perfect, but I strive for perfection, which means when I come up short, at least it's as close as I feel like I could have gotten it. Something else too that I think maybe would help with that is, I'm not sure if Origin PC is operating in this way, but if you know you're doing these kind of like turnkey builds like this, where here's our max build, rigid tubed, it's like click a button and that's the one you order, make a jig, get these all bend up right, and then bend a crap ton of them all at once, and then you just plug them in. It takes a lot of upfront labor to get it ready, but having the tubes pre-bent instead of having to bend them each time you do a build, again, they may have already done that. If they did, I think they need to rework their jigs because of the fact that some of these angles are off. Something I just want to point out though, I think given the caliber of components that are in here, that's something worth mentioning. But little details that really do stand out is like the custom printed Origin backplate on the Corsair graphics card block look awesome. It ties in with the theme. It's white and black, which goes really well with the 5000X, especially in white. I wonder if they have a black one with white for the inverse for the black case. But I mean, there's a lot of details happening here that really tend to, it's obvious this is a high-end build. I just would have liked to have seen the tubes be maybe a little bit more perfect in that sense. The horizontal lines on the CPU is going up slightly, the horizontal on the GPU is going down slightly, so just little things like that I would have liked to have seen improved. Anyway, let's go ahead and see how the temperatures do performance-wise. So we're gonna go ahead and start off here with Cinebench. I like Cinebench because it's a very difficult instruction. It creates a lot of heat, and the fact that we can loop it. So let's go ahead and just right out of the box, again, no overclocks, Ryzen Master is not even installed. I haven't even gotten into the BIOS to see if we have any sort of core enhancement happening on the motherboard, which is something that we could definitely look at. We'll just do one run here to see what our score is, and we'll keep an eye on our core clocks. So with all cores going, yeah, see it dropped down to 3.86. There's clearly no core enhancement happening here. There's no sort of overclock. 9703. Well, the thing is, I know this CPU is capable of running like a 4142 all-core, which means if we went into the ASUS BIOS and did core enhancement and up the power limits and stuff, we would obviously be able to see an improvement there. But this is out of the box, which is nice. Our cores reached a maximum 66, 66, 66, 60. Wow. That's really consistent. It's not like Intel where you're like 13C delta across the chip, depending on where you end up. So with that 66C and with 85C being where the max TJ Max is for the CPU, clearly we've got 19C of headroom, which means we could bump this up to 4 gigs all core, no problem. But we're not gonna do that right now. We are gonna go ahead and just let this loop, because one thing we do wanna see is where our temperature maxes out at. So we're actually about to complete the 5-minute counter, but it doesn't even matter because look at this. So you'll see these peaks of temperature. We're only at 61C during the test, and then it drops to 60 towards the end. I think the reason for that is the fans might pop up slightly on RPM, but the case is still near silent. I can hear a slight hum of the fans. I mean, there are 3, 6, 9, 10 of them in there. Every time you see a spike, that's actually in between the tests, because if you're not aware, the way Ryzen's voltage logic works, the voltage actually drops significantly under load to where it really needs to be for the core clocks to be maintained. And then at lower load and idle, the voltages are actually at their highest. And I get a lot of people that email me saying, why is my voltage out of control? Why am I getting like 1.5 volts on my Ryzen at idle? Oh my God, it's broken and it's overheating and stuff. No, the reason why they do that is because of the fact that you see your highest core clock when you are not doing anything with Ryzen. Look, we're sitting at 4 gigs essentially all core right now at idle. So if the voltage were to drop as the load comes down, then you could potentially run into instabilities. So the way the Ryzen works is the voltage is actually highest when it's under the least amount of load. And then when it sees that there's a load, the voltage will drop to right about where it needs to be to maintain the clock speed that you're currently seeing. So that's why each one of these spikes in the test is when the test is loading in between. So it's funny, the temperature actually comes down as the test runs because the voltage comes down with it. So that just really goes to show you how voltage tuning is actually really important with your stuff, because voltage is what actually generates the amount of heat in your CPU, not just the frequency. Voltage is more important. So that's why you can see right now, actually under idle condition with water, we're sitting at 45C on the CPU. Cooling wise, clearly with 2 360 radiators on here, means that we've got plenty of cooling for the CPU. 10 Cinebench runs back to back to back to back. Without any sort of rise in the temperature. So if you can see right here, if we zoom in, the first run during the meat of the test, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 61. Yeah, over those 5 minutes, seeing 1 C increase, yeah, I would say the cooling is clearly working for the CPU. Yes, I know there's a lot of different types of CPU tasks and instructions that would put different types of load on it. We find that Cinebench R20 is much higher than real world scenario, and that's what we do for our CPU temperature testing around here. I'm curious though, because this is a Founders Edition RTX 3090 on water, I'm now gonna go on a little bit of an overclocking tangent here to see if I can't break 15,000 in Port Royal on this card out of the box. 15,000 is kind of like the first barrier you break into. Sure, we've been up over 18,000 now on our LN2 cooled stuff, but breaking 15,000 and getting as far into 15 as possible requires water to do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and use Heaven here to see how well our version or our sample will overclock. See if we won the lottery here or not. 200? No. Wow. So my problem with doing 2100 is that's 2130 right now by doing 2 plus 200 on our core clock. 2130, there it is, it crashed at 2145. That 2130 wasn't the top of the boost bin. We were power limited, so that's why it came down. So as soon as it tried to go higher, there wasn't enough voltage to support it, and that's just because this is a stock locked card. So it did 2145 at 150, which is what we also got at 200. So that's where we're gonna leave it. Let's see if that will be enough to break 15,000 in Port Royal. Oh, and our temperature looks like we were approaching 53 C. You'd be surprised how much water and air these days, how close together they can be in terms of taking a big fat triple slot 3-fan massive blower can keep it in the high 50s as well. But look how tiny this card is. You just do it an itty bitty little block, an itty bitty little card. But I think it's also important to note, I've not touched the fan profiles on this. I have not pushed the fans up to generate any more cooling in here. This is all out of the box, with the exception of changing like the MSI Afterburner settings. Absolutely the way it ships. Oh, wah, wah. Okay, so what was our core clock during that? Our max temperature got up to 55. If we look at the core clock, you can see it fluctuating 2010, 2025, 2100, 2010, 20, yes. Like I said, 15,000 is that first like barrier. And I think it took the air conditioner and ice water for us to actually do it. We can't all break our scores and stuff that we want all the time. So let's go ahead and come back with some final thoughts here on the Origin PC 5000X custom AMD rig. All right, so let's talk about the build and why it exists. I'm sure, look, my audience is full of a lot of DIYers or build your own, which is great. I am always gonna advocate for build your own, advocate for build your own. There's just a satisfying experience of putting the parts together, making it yours, choosing the parts, going through the fun of assembling it, the holding your breath when you push the power button, hoping everything's gonna work, and then seeing that first post screen. There's a feeling there that if you've never built a computer, you probably don't necessarily understand. I guess it's kind of like when you fire up an engine that you built for the first time and it actually makes combustion, you're kind of like, yay. But look, there's a lot of people out there that just are not comfortable with trying this level of build. They're not that comfortable with trying to pick all the water cooling components, make sure they got the right stuff that all works together, the right size tubing with the right size fitting, or getting the heat gun and all that to bend it and get it all in there looking nice. Companies like Origin PC exist so that you can own that type of rig without having to take the fear and the risk of doing it yourself. Let's face it, with PC parts being what they are today, this is a very expensive setup. And if you're looking to do something like this and you just want the peace of mind of, I want someone else to build it and I want it to look as good as the systems I see featured on Jay's like setup featurettes that we do all the time, then you can have that with a company like Origin PC. Now, Origin has a bunch of promos that are kind of changing throughout the year. So we're gonna do a link down in the description below, which will not only take you to the Origin PC website so that you can start customizing builds and looking at what they have to offer, but you can also see what their latest promo code is so that you can get a little bit more for your money. We're always gonna advocate for build your own. We're also always gonna advocate as well for pre-builts that can obviously express value for people that just don't wanna take the risk to do it themselves. All I care about is that we get as many PCs in as many homes as possible, because of the fact that until you've experienced PC gaming and just what you can do on computers, whether it be mining, gaming, programming, learning to do artwork, really what you can do on a computer is endless, which is why I've always been infatuated with the computers ever since I was sitting on my dad's lap at the wee old age of 2. Speaking of I probably weed on his lap once or twice while sitting there, but that's neither here nor there, or that's just awkward, the fact that I even said that. So why don't you guys do me a favor, go into the description below, check out what Origin PC has to offer, see what their latest promo codes are, and as always, we will see you guys in the next one. And do me a favor, sound off down below what you guys think about this color combo, because like I said, they stole my thunder. I was gonna do this exact combo.